You're not broke, you're not bad with money, and you're not falling behind. But if it feels like no matter how much you make, it's never enough, there's something you need to hear right now. The game has changed. 6 years ago, your income might have been enough to live comfortably. Today, that same income just barely keeps you afloat. And here's the crazy part. Even people making $100,000, $150,000 a year are starting to feel the same way. So how much do you actually need to feel financially secure in 2026? And why does it feel like the more people earn, the worse it gets? Let's break it down. How much you actually need in 2026? So let's start with a number that nobody really wants to hear. How much do you actually need just to feel financially okay in 2026? Not rich, not wealthy, just stable. For a typical family of 4 to 6 people in the U.S., that number is now around $169,000 a year. And that's not a luxury lifestyle. That's just covering the basics with a little bit left over. Now here's the problem. The average family at that size is only making about $144,000 a year. That's a $25,000 gap every single year. And at first, that might still sound like a lot of money. But once you start breaking it down, housing, food, healthcare, childcare, taxes, debt, that money disappears fast. What makes this even more surprising is that $144,000 a year is already way above the median household income in the U.S. The median is closer to $84,000. So we're talking about families making $60,000 more than average and still falling behind. That's the shift. That's what people are starting to feel. Because for a long time, the idea was simple. If you worked hard, got a decent job, and made it into the middle class, you'd be okay. But now, even middle to upper income households are starting to feel financially stretched. And this isn't just about numbers, it's about expectations. People are trying to hold on to a standard of living that their income just can't support anymore. So the real question isn't just how much you make, it's what financially secure actually means now. Because the definition of being stable today is very different from what it used to be.
What financially secure really means. So before we go any further, we need to get clear on one thing. What does it actually mean to be financially secure today? Because most people hear that and think it just means making a lot of money. But that's not really how it works anymore. Financial security today has a very specific definition. And it's a lot more demanding than most people realize. It means you can comfortably afford your housing, your food, your health care, child care if you have kids, transportation, taxes, and any debt payments you have. And on top of all of that, you're still able to save at least 10% of your income. That's the baseline. Not luxury, not wealth, just stability. And if you're not hitting that standard, even if things feel okay on the surface, you're technically considered financially insecure. That's where things start to get uncomfortable, because more than 40% of families in the U.S. are close to that line, but not quite there. They can cover most of their expenses, but there's very little margin for error. One unexpected bill, one medical expense, one disruption in income.
And suddenly, everything starts to feel unstable. When you look deeper, it becomes clear who's under the most pressure. Single parents are in the toughest position right now. About 87% of single parents with 2 kids fall below that financial security threshold. That's an overwhelming majority. But even in 2-parent households, things aren't nearly as comfortable as people assume. And when families are asked why it feels so hard to stay afloat, the answers are almost always the same. It comes down to 3 major costs. The first is childcare.
Right now, childcare can cost around $2,000 a month per child. That's not a luxury. That's just basic coverage so parents can work. The second is housing, and this one hits everyone. But for families, it's even more expensive because you don't just need a place to live, you need a bigger one. More space, more rooms, higher rent, or a larger mortgage. And then there's food. Groceries have gotten significantly more expensive, and the more people you have in your household, the faster that cost grows. It adds up quickly, even if you're careful. So when you put all of this together, families aren't dealing with just one financial pressure. They're getting hit from multiple directions at the same time. That's why having kids in 2026, purely from a financial standpoint, puts you at a disadvantage. Not because it's the wrong decision, but because the system around it has become much more expensive. But this isn't just a family problem. That's the key point. Even if you don't have kids, about 44% of households under 65 are still below that same financial security threshold. So this is happening across the board. This isn't about one group struggling. It's not about people making bad decisions. This is broad financial pressure across the entire economy. And once you see that, you start to realize this isn't just about how people spend money. It's about something deeper. Because if you look at the data, it's already outdated.
The data is already outdated. It's about something deeper. Because if you really look at the numbers, they don't tell the full story. And the reason is simple. Most of the data people rely on is already outdated. A lot of these financial benchmarks are based on numbers from 2023. That's already a few years behind. And in the last few years alone, the cost of living has changed dramatically. Housing went up, food went up, insurance, healthcare, everything went up. So when you see numbers like this, a single adult with no kids needs about $63,000 a year to be financially secure. But the reality is, most people in that category are only making around $48,000. That gap already exists on paper. But in real life, it's probably even bigger now. Because try living on $63,000 today, especially if you're paying close to $2,000 a month in rent or a mortgage. Yes, it's possible, but it doesn't leave you with much breathing room. You're not building real savings. You're not investing consistently. You're just maintaining. And that's assuming nothing goes wrong. But here's where things get more concerning. About 17% of Americans have no emergency savings at all. That means one unexpected expense can immediately turn into debt. And when you look at older generations, it's not much better. Around 38% of people over the age of 65 have no retirement savings, which means many of them either can't retire or they're relying almost entirely on Social Security. So this isn't just a short-term problem. It's something that carries across your entire life. Now, here's something that surprises a lot of people. Financial insecurity is actually higher in non-metro areas than in big cities. It's about 54% outside metro areas compared to 48% in cities. At first, that doesn't make sense because we usually think of cities as more expensive, higher rent, higher cost of living, more pressure. But the difference is, cities also offer higher incomes, more job opportunities, and more access to resources and support systems. So even though it costs more to live there, people often have more ways to keep up. In smaller or rural areas, the cost might be lower, but incomes are also lower, and that gap still creates financial pressure. Another interesting comparison is renters versus homeowners. About 74% of renters are considered financially insecure compared to around 39% of homeowners. But this doesn't necessarily mean homeowners are doing that much better month to month. A big part of that difference comes from equity. Homeowners have assets they can tap into, so on paper they look more secure, but in reality some of them might still be cash poor. They might have a house, but still struggle with income and expenses. And that's important to understand,
Because once again, these categories don't tell the whole story. You can look stable on paper and still feel like you're falling behind in real life. So now that we understand the gap, the real question becomes, where do you actually fall in today's economy?
Where you actually fall. So now the question becomes simple. Where do you actually fall in today's economy? Because once you understand these ranges, you start to see why so many people feel stuck. Let's start from the bottom and work our way up. If you're earning less than $55,000 a year, you're considered low income in today's economy. That's about 30% of households. And in most cases, this means you're covering the basics: housing, food, healthcare, maybe. But there's usually little to no savings and very little room for anything going wrong. One emergency, one unexpected expense, and you're immediately under pressure. Now moving into the middle. If you're earning between $55,000 and $167,000 a year, you fall into the middle income category. That's about half of the population. And this is where things get interesting. Because on paper, this sounds like a wide range, but in reality, your experience here can be completely different. If you're a single person making $100,000 a year, you're probably doing pretty well. You have flexibility, you can save, you can invest, you can breathe. But if you're making that same $100,000 with a family of 4 or 5, that's a completely different situation. Now you're stretched. Now every expense matters. Now you're doing the math every month. And that's the part most people don't talk about. Income alone doesn't determine your lifestyle. Your household size, your location, your fixed expenses, those matter just as much. And that's why so many people in the middle class feel like they're barely keeping up. Because even though the number sounds high, it doesn't go as far as it used to. Now let's move to the upper tier. If you're earning over $167,000 a year, you're considered upper income. And this is where most people assume you've made it. But that's not always true. If you're just above that line, say $170K a year, you can still feel financial pressure, especially if you live in a high-cost area, especially if you have kids. Now, once you get above $200,000 a year, life does get more comfortable. You have more flexibility, more options, more breathing room. But even then, it doesn't automatically make you rich. That's an important distinction. Because in today's economy, being high income is not the same as being wealthy. To be in the top 10% of households, you need to be making around $250,000 a year. Top 5%, around $335,000. And if you want to be in the top 1%, you're looking at over $650,000 a year. So when people hear $200K and think that's rich, statistically, it's not. It just means you're above average. And once you see that, things start to click. Because it explains why someone making $50K and someone making $200K can both feel financially stressed at the same time. Different levels, same pressure. And this is where things get even more interesting. Because even the people at the top are making mistakes that keep them stuck.
Why high earners still struggle? Now, you might be thinking, if you earn over $200,000 a year, you must be doing fine, right? Well, not necessarily. High income doesn't automatically mean financial security. A lot of people at this level make very common mistakes that eat away at their wealth and create stress. First, there's lifestyle creep. As income rises, spending rises too. You buy the bigger house, the nicer car, you travel more, and suddenly even a high income feels tight. Next, there's a lack of budgeting. Some high earners don't have a clear plan for their money. They earn a lot, but they don't track it. They don't optimize their savings or investments. And this creates a false sense of security. Just because you see multiple six figures on your paycheck doesn't mean you're actually getting ahead. Another huge trap is overspending on your children's education. Private schools, college funds, this can easily run over $300,000 per child in a lifetime.
Now, it's noble to invest in your kids,
But many high earners sacrifice their own financial stability to fund their children's education without realizing it might not even guarantee a better outcome. On the other end, some people oversave. They max out retirement accounts, cut back on almost everything, and live a subsistence lifestyle. That's not bad if your goal is early retirement, but without a proper plan, it can actually limit your quality of life now. And here's another big one: poor tax planning. High incomes often mean higher tax brackets, yet many people don't have strategies in place. They miss deductions, credits, and ways to optimize taxes. This can cost thousands, sometimes tens of thousands of dollars a year. And finally, credit and debt can still be a huge pressure point. Even high earners can carry large loans or credit card balances. Student loans, mortgages, car payments, all of these can drag people down. So even at the top, financial insecurity is very real. It just looks different than it does for people earning $50K a year. The numbers are higher, the mistakes are bigger, and the consequences can be just as stressful. The takeaway? It doesn't matter how much you make. What matters is how much you keep, how you plan, and whether your money is working for you.
The final takeaways. So now that we've looked at low, middle, and high incomes and how families and individuals are struggling across the board, what's the big picture? The reality is simple. The system has changed. It's not that people are broke, it's that the economy and cost of living have shifted dramatically in recent years. Even if you're earning what used to be considered a comfortable income, you may still feel financial pressure. And that's true for families, single parents, renters, homeowners, even people earning over $200,000 a year. The key takeaway here is this: it doesn't matter how much you make. What matters is how much you keep, how well you plan, and how intentional you are with your money. If you don't have a clear strategy, even high earners can fall behind. If you do have a plan, even lower-income households can build stability and security over time. It's also important to understand your own situation. Know your income, your expenses, your debt, and your savings. Understand how your household size and location impact your financial reality. And don't rely solely on statistics. They give you context, but they don't tell your full story. Finally, remember that building financial security is a long game. It's not about chasing a number. It's about creating habits, protecting yourself from risks, and making smart, intentional decisions every month.
So, to sum it up, families are under more pressure than ever. Single parents are struggling the most. Middle-class households feel stretched, even at seemingly high incomes. And high earners are not immune to financial traps. The system has changed, and we all need to adapt. Take a hard look at your finances today. Focus on saving, budgeting, and smart planning. Because the truth is, your financial security depends less on how much you make and more on how wisely you manage what you have. If you found this video helpful, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe for more insights. And leave a comment below letting me know which part of this video surprised you the most. I read every comment and I'd love to hear your thoughts. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.